First and foremost, fit is the most important thing of anybody's clothing, whether you make it yourself or you buy it from the store. So make sure that you're buying the right size to fit your body. Whether you're a beginner or you've been sewing for years, these 8 tips will help your clothing look really professional. Let's get into it. Fit is the most important thing of anybody's clothing, whether you make it yourself or you buy it from the store. When you're buying your pattern, you just don't follow it blindly. Take your measurements first and then fit for your widest part. So say for instance, your hips are the widest area on your body. You measure for that, you cut for that, and then you adjust everything else accordingly. I usually do my shoulders and my bust because usually that is the hardest place to fit, and then you can adjust everything else as you go along. If you have to, make a muslin. Muslin is basically very inexpensive fabric that you can make a sample garment first to adjust your fit if you need it, and then finally, if you need to, adjust the pattern. So just measure yourself, like I said, measure yourself well, and then you can adjust the pattern accordingly. Just because it says a size 6 doesn't mean it's a size 6 that fits your body. I have a measurement toolkit that you can get. You can download it and it's right below this video. Number 2, choose the right fabric. Fabric is like the foundation of a house. Get it wrong, it's going to mess up your whole garment. So depending on what you're making, if it's a flowy, you get like a chalice or, a crepe. If it's a structural jacket, you get maybe like denim or a twill or suiting fabric. And if it's a modest clothing, make sure the opacity is, you can't see through it. You don't want that. It drapes well and it's comfortable. So your fabric is very important, whether it's knit or woven, and follow the pattern instruction. On the back of the pattern, they have suggested fabrics, and the pattern is usually made for those type of fabrics. So follow the pattern instructions and you will have a more likely chance of your garment coming out well. Number 3, pay attention to the fabric grain. It is very important. Usually you cut everything on the straight grain, which is parallel to the selvage, which is the end of the fabric. There's a cross grain, which is perpendicular to the selvage, and then there's the bias, which is a 45-degree angle. So when you're laying out your fabric and you're laying out your pattern, you have to lay it out either on a straight grain, the cross grain, or the bias. You have to read the markings on the pattern, and usually it has the grain line so you can lay it out properly. Just take your time, lay it out properly, and cut. When you don't cut it on the straight, cross, or bias as suggested by the pattern, you can wind up with a twisted garment and it doesn't lay and fall right on your body. Number 4, make sure your sewing lines are straight. It's the difference between homemade and professional, believe me. So when you're sewing your garment, it really just takes practice. Just use a seam guide if necessary, and you follow. They have different markings on the sewing machine, usually by a 1/2 inch, 5/8, and 3/4 on your sewing machine, and just follow along with that and you'll be okay. So just make sure when you're sewing, you can sew your seams as straight as possible, and also follow the guidelines from the pattern. Usually they're about a 1/2 inch or 5/8 of an inch. Just make sure that you're reading the instructions and you follow the seam allowance that the pattern requires. Number 5, understitch the collars and the facing. A lot of people overlook this part, but it really makes the garment look professional. Basically what it is, it keeps the facing and linings from rolling to the outside of the garment. When you're sewing an understitch, it is a top stitch that is really close to the seam of the fabric. An understitch is usually a top stitch that is sewn an 1/8 or 1/16 of an inch away from a seam to keep it from turning over to the facing side of the garment. It makes it look a lot more professional when you're finishing your garment. Number 6, finish your seams. No one wants to see loose threads or frayed edges on the inside of your garment. Ways to finish your seam is an overlock or a serger, a zigzag stitch, French seams for very delicate fabrics, and also a binding, which is a couture finish. So make sure you finish your seam. It gives it a really professional look. Number 7, and this is very important, press everything. Pressing and ironing ironing are two different things. Pressing is putting pressure on your seams to make it lay flat. Ironing is just getting the wrinkles out. So there's a difference between pressing and ironing. So you have to press your seams. Use the right temperature for your fabric so that it doesn't burn. Press every single seam, preferably while you're sewing. If not, as you're sewing like items, like if you're doing the sleeve, you press the sleeve seam. You do the shoulders. There's a tailor's ham that you can use to go around the curved seams, and steam is your friend, especially on fabrics that call for it, like the wools and the cottons and stuff like that. You know, it helps press the seams. So this is an important step. Don't skip it. Last but not least, number 8, cut all your threads. You don't want to walk down the street with threads hanging from your garment. So all you have to do is use like sharp, small scissors to cut inside and outside of your garment to get rid of all the loose threads. It screams professional, and loose threads scream homemade. So we do not want that. So there you have it, 8 ways to make your sewing look more professional. To get you started, you can download our Remeasure Your Body toolkit right below this video. Hit that subscribe button and that notification bell, and drop in the comments what's your biggest sewing struggle. I'll see you in the next video.